right? We're jumping right into the source material today, and we're starting with an idea that might really throw you for a loop. Forget everything you think you know about why belief systems decline. This material suggests something completely different.
Yeah, it really turns the common narrative on its head.
The core argument, and this is what our whole deep dive is about, is this. Religion didn't fail because people became, immoral or rebellious. It collapsed because it got comfortable.
And that is such a counterintuitive claim, which is exactly why we need to unpack it. Our mission today is to dig into this specific critique, the idea that modern frameworks of meaning just lost their power.
Not from an outside attack.
No, not at all. It was a slow internal thing. They started prioritizing reassurance over rigor.
Yeah.
We're looking at a philosophy that basically argues for stronger, tougher structures because it believes the soft answers are what failed us.
The sources really set up the stark contrast. On one side, you have what these belief systems use to demand, challenge, responsibility, real sacrifice.
Right.
And on the other, this modern need for comfort, for affirmation, for an escape. We should probably clarify for anyone following along, the sources call this demanding alternative Actulint.
Yes, and they use it as a kind of measuring stick to see where other systems went wrong.
So really, we're examining the hidden cost of choosing ease over everything else.
Exactly. I mean, if you look at what was expected from people for centuries, the whole structure was designed to build you up through friction. It wasn't about finding a safe space to hide. It was about giving you the tools to engage with a difficult world and, become strong.
Okay, so let's start there. Let's talk about that original demand.
Yeah.
What did these systems originally offer? And more importantly, what did they ask for in return that's now missing?
It was all about demands. Discipline, restraint, responsibility, constant sacrifices. The sources really hammer this point home. These systems imposed a structure that required adults to, carry their own weight.
So it was active, not passive.
Very active. When you look at the historical context, the demands weren't just about being a good person. They were operational. You had duties, rituals, things you had to do that took real effort and time. The system demanded your agency.
But then the sources point to this moment, this subtle trade-off where everything started to shift. It wasn't a big dramatic break.
No, and that's what's so fascinating about their analysis. It was insidious. Comfort just sort of crept in and replaced challenge. Reassurance replaced rigor.
And that's when the authority started to crumble.
That's the argument. The moment belief replaced responsibility, it was the beginning of the end. The transition was huge. Faith went from being something you lived, a framework for making hard choices, to something you just felt.
Like an internal comfort blanket.
An internal comfort blanket. Perfect analogy.
I think we need a concrete example there. How does a faith go from being lived to just being felt? What does that look like?
Okay. Think about the difference between building a cathedral, which takes immense physical labor, community effort, sacrifice over generations, real skill, versus, say, attending a service designed to make you feel affirmed and loved no matter what you did the rest of the week.
Okay, I see.
The first one demands competence and shared responsibility for a massive, difficult project. The second one just asks for passive attendance. The sources argue our collective muscle for real effort just atrophied when the focus shifted to the inner affirmed self.
And that brings us to the core critique, doesn't it? The argument that these structures lost their authority not because they were too strict, which is what you always hear,
Right, that's the common complaint.
but because they became too gentle. They stopped asking people to confront reality and instead started offering them ways to escape it.
And if the whole point of a system is to train you for reality, but then you take away the necessary friction, the resistance, the pain, you're not training people anymore, you're just soothing them.
And soothing doesn't build resilience.
It breeds dependency.
Which leads directly to this central paradox they talk about. Because comfort feels like the right thing to do. It feels compassionate.
Of course.
But this philosophy insists that comfort without that demand for responsibility actually makes you weaker.
It absolutely challenges our modern therapeutic culture. The source argues that any system designed for ease, well, it inevitably starts to erode the very things that make us grow. They actually list 3 major consequences when a system puts comfort first.
Let's break those down because that's the real cost of this trade-off. What's the first one? The one about suffering.
So when suffering is just explained away, it's all part of a bigger plan, or it's immediately minimized. Instead of being examined as a source of information, your growth just stalls.
You lose a lesson.
You lose the lesson completely. The painful thing stops being a reason to change and just becomes, a bad memory you need to manage emotionally. It's like if a student fails a class and the school just lowers the passing grade for them. They never learn what it takes to meet the standard.
Okay, but I have to push back on this a little. Isn't some level of comfort, or at least some kind of emotional support, necessary for mental health? Is the source just advocating for a kind of brutal emotional coldness?
That's a great question and a vital one. They're careful about this. They aren't saying empathy is bad. They're condemning preemptive comfort that removes the stakes.
Ah, okay.
The Actulint philosophy would say that the greatest comfort actually comes from being capable, not from someone telling you it'll be okay. If you're anxious because you feel like you can't handle the world, reassurance is just a temporary patch. Real stability, they argue, comes from building your skills until the world doesn't feel so overwhelming anymore.
So if the first point is about dodging the lessons from suffering, the second one seems to strike right at accountability.
It's all about the ease of moral recovery. When forgiveness is guaranteed, like a blanket policy no matter what, instead of being earned through real amends or changed behavior, accountability just evaporates.
Why bother with the hard work if there are no real consequences for failing?
Exactly. The system becomes a kind of moral insurance policy that covers everything, and suddenly, moral effort is just optional, a luxury.
You see that everywhere, not just in religion. Think about zero-consequence environments, in education, or even some workplaces, where avoiding conflict is more important than actual performance.
Precisely. The sources call it preemptive moral cancellation. It's the system avoiding the friction that's needed to force real growth. If the structure is too soft to deliver the consequence, why would anyone work hard to avoid the mistake?
And that leads right into the third consequence, which sounds like the ultimate procrastination tool.
It is. It's the death of urgency. When hope is framed as this passive, guaranteed thing, usually tied to some future salvation, it replaces active effort now.
Why struggle today if some future event will wipe the slate clean anyway?
Right. It prioritizes waiting over doing. It turns people into comfortable, passive dependence.
The sources wrap this section up with a really powerful analogy: the physics of friction. Comfort is seductive because it makes the ride smooth, it numbs urgency.
But the conclusion is just brutal.
Without pressure, nothing sharpens. Without resistance, nothing strengthens.
It's a fundamental law of development, right? To get stronger, you need to lift heavier things. The systems that prioritized comfort were basically taking the weights off the bar. And that's why this Actulint framework exists. It's built on the idea that the trade-off was a complete failure.
So if the old model collapsed because it was too gentle, what does Actulint offer instead? You said they're not offering comfort, they're offering structure. What does that actually mean?
Actulint's proposition is clear. People need stronger frameworks, not softer answers. They need rigor. They need fewer loopholes to avoid responsibility.
So it's not just about being tough for toughness' sake.
No, it's a commitment to competence as the highest good. They believe that true meaning isn't something you find, it's something you have to build through effort.
It sounds like they're defining meaning almost entirely through action and capability, rather than an internal feeling or belief.
That is the absolute crux of it. And they lay out this very clear sequence for how it works. They call it the C chain. It's their path to meaning.
Okay, let's walk through that C chain step by step. This sounds like the blueprint for their whole philosophy.
It starts by identifying the problem we've been talking about. Comfort delays responsibility. That ease, that avoidance, it prevents you from taking the first critical step.
But once you do embrace responsibility, which is almost always uncomfortable, what happens next?
It produces competence. That's the engine of the whole thing.
Responsibility produces competence because you're forced to learn the skills you need to handle the situation.
You have to. Competence is the natural result of dealing with high-stakes reality. And once you have competence, you gain agency, a sense of control, a real skill set. And finally, that competence produces meaning.
So meaning isn't a gift.
No, it's the byproduct of being capable and effective in a difficult world.
That definition of meaning coming from capability, that's a direct shot at how we often deal with anxiety. If I'm anxious because I feel incapable, someone comforting me just kind of validates that feeling.
Exactly. Actulint's approach to anxiety is to increase your capability, not to promise you a rescue. They'd argue that relying on external salvation is a form of learned helplessness. The Actulint fix is to mandate the difficult work that proves to you that you are not helpless.
If you're competent enough to handle your reality, the fear shrinks.
It naturally diminishes, which leads to their rejection of, waiting for some future reward. They want to eliminate that excuse.
Yeah, they're fierce about that.
Absolutely. They completely reject the idea that some future paradise can excuse you from acting now. There's a quote in the source that's just so blunt about it. There is no salvation waiting to correct neglect. No future realm to justify avoidance today.
The focus is entirely on the now. The hard work has to be done now.
Right now, in this life.
So the final requirement of this philosophy is that meaning isn't something you're given. It has to be forged.
Meaning is not preserved by comfort. It's forged through intense effort, through restraint, and through constantly taking on responsibility. It's a demanding framework because, as these sources see it, the systems that stopped demanding anything just collapsed. They became too easy to matter.
So what we've really uncovered in this deep dive is this ruthless critique. It argues that institutions of meaning, spiritual, philosophical, whatever, didn't fail because they were too rigid. They failed because they demanded too little.
They made the difficult path soft.
And in doing that, they lost their power to build character. The sources present this really firm, uncompromising case against the seductive pull of ease, all in favor of the much harder path toward competence and ultimately meaning.
And that really leaves us with a challenge, doesn't it? Something for you, the listener, to think about based on this harsh philosophy. If comfort really is the main threat to meaning and competence, if making things easier is actually bad for our growth, you have to ask yourself, what other parts of our modern culture, beyond just religion, might be guilty of providing a kind of guaranteed forgiveness or explaining away suffering? What societal machine is being softened today that should really stay hard, and what's the hidden price we're all paying for our collective comfort?